Hello friends, this is David Sami with A Christian Journey. I want to apologize that last week I was not able to load up a video. I typically want to load at least a video a week, but unfortunately we had so many things going on that I was so busy that I was not able to load a video, so I want to apologize for that. But today I want to talk a little bit about some of the qualities of an unhealthy church leadership. Some of the things that I'm going to bring out, maybe you are attending a church that some of the leadership might resemble of some of the things that we are talking about today. If you are, you may want to keep what we are bringing up in mind and again know how to proceed in a healthy way, at least as much as it depends on you. So today, let's talk about 4 qualities of an unhealthy church leadership. And the first quality that makes a leadership to be unhealthy is a domineering pastors. These are pastors with a strong personality that they make you feel like there is only one way of seeing things and there could be no variation. For them, usually the objectives, the goals are the most important thing. And after a while, the congregation would appear more like a regimented army rather than a church fellowship, because everything is done one way. And with their strong personality, they project into people what their views are on things. And they create the atmosphere in the fellowship that everybody would be afraid of expressing any other opinion, or maybe there is another way of doing things that may be beneficial, but everybody would be scared of saying anything that will go against the leadership because the leadership is so domineering. Now, this type of leadership usually produce believers who are cold and very rigid in their view of life and spirituality. There is no joy in their spirituality. There is only righteousness. But the righteousness is not coupled with joy. We don't get attracted to these type of people. We only see them as very judgmental. Everything is either black or white, wrong or right. And for them, there is never much any gray or any form of understanding. You know, Jesus makes an interesting statement in Mark chapter 2, verse 27, talking to the Pharisees. He says to them, the Sabbath was made for man, not man for Sabbath. You see, the laws of God, the instructions of God were made for us, for believers, that it might go well for us. And we want to obey God's instructions and commands. But when you begin to see in reverse that the people are made for the commands, what happens is we gradually develop a harsh expression of Christianity. People become expendable. What is the most important thing are the laws and commands. But you see, even though I place a high emphasis, and I think today we lack in our obedience, but a spiritual growth, a healthy spiritual growth, is very gradual. And it requires patience and lots of encouragement from our spiritual leaders, because it does take time. But you know what is interesting is Ezra gives us a good example of what a spiritual leader should look like. In Ezra chapter 7, verse 10, we read, Ezra prepared his heart to seek the law of the Lord, to do it, and to teach it in Israel. First, a spiritual leader wants to seek the law of the Lord for themselves. Then try to implement in their own lives. And once they have gone ahead to a certain extent, develop spiritual abilities, leadership, and they know what it takes, then you come and teach it to others. But if you have not implemented yourself, you don't know what it's like. You don't know what are the difficulties or what are the things that we are going to encounter along the way. But if you only have the knowledge and you want to teach, you can become a little harsh because all you think about, why don't the people apply what I'm saying to them? Only if they apply and do it, it will go well with them. But you see, once you begin to try to implement it yourself, and you see that it is not easy to truly become spiritual, then you become more patient, more understanding with people, and you realize that to really get people to go where they need to go, first you need to be an example to them and help them to grow by encouragement and patience. And also one note, if your pastor is domineering and very strong pastor, and he puts forth maybe ideas that maybe you're able to understand it in your mind, but in your heart of heart, you are struggling with that understanding. My, if I may call it advice, is do not proceed in that direction until your heart and mind are in the same place. Because sometimes people with a strong personality can convince us of something that we may understand in our mind, but internally something is not right. We don't feel right about that path or maybe about that decision. It would be best not to proceed until your heart and mind are in harmony, are in agreement. Because the wisdom that comes from above, it's peaceful, it's agreeable, it settles well. So when it comes to directions of your life, if you ever are in that place, wait, pray, and ask guidance from the Lord, and see if the attitude of your heart would change, or maybe your opinion would change about that particular subject. So just something to keep in mind, because strong people have a tendency to project into us their convictions, their ideas, and they don't give you the right to choose whether to agree with that or not. For them, this is the way and the only way. So something to keep in mind if you have a very strong spiritual leader. Now, the second unhealthy leadership is one that overemphasizes money. Unfortunately today, as a matter of fact, if Lord wills, the next video, I want to talk about some of the churches that are under the evangelical banners. And one of them would be the health and wealth gospel. I want to kind of talk a little bit about that, that quality that we see in some churches that overemphasize money and giving, tithing. As a matter of fact, my oldest son right now, he's attending a church that for him to become a member in that church and participate into ministerial work, he has to agree to tithe. You see, to me, that is a little bit over the top. Yes, I think pastors should be supported financially. But when you keep overemphasizing tithing, giving, and you begin to create an environment that people begin to become more inclined to view their relationship with God on the basis of what they can get out of God rather than become godly, because we overemphasize so much money, blessing, and some of the codes they use is sow seed into the ministry. If you give, God will give to you. But it all becomes almost like If you want financial blessing, if you want blessing in your life, you gotta give money. And they began to distort our views of God. Our pursuit for God is not for God Himself, but what He can do for us and how much blessing we can get out of God. You see, that is a distortion of the gospel. And as a rule of thumb, I think a pastor's lifestyle should resemble his congregational lifestyle. Sometimes you may have a congregation that is more affluent, so the pastor maybe has more affluent lifestyle, and sometimes the congregation have modest means, and I think the pastor's lifestyle should reflect that. But when you have pastors that just focusing so much on money and their lifestyle is very flamboyant, that to me is not a right leadership, a right spiritual leadership. So be mindful if you are attending a church that overemphasizes money and giving. There is a place to talk about that, but the goal should be godliness, not keep thinking what I can get out of God. How can I get blessing out of God? Again, hopefully, if the Lord wills, next week we want to talk a little bit about this prosperity gospel and what are some of its misguidance, where do they go wrong, and what are some of the things to keep an eye on. But the third qualities of unhealthy leadership is when we major in minors. We could attend churches that the leaderships really have a strong conviction about certain things, but they major in minors. You see, for them, unfortunately, these areas where they feel very strongly about, it becomes their whole gospel. This becomes Christianity. Like when I first became a Christian, the churches that I attend had a high emphasis on the subject of prophecy. Everything was prophecy, the second coming of the Lord, rapture of the church, and things of that nature. So my focus of a spiritual growth was to keep an eye on newspaper and the Bible. What is going on in the world? Who is the Antichrist? How things are developing according to Bible prophecy. You see, these things have a place in our Christian life, but they should only be one slice in our Christian life, not the whole thing. Because when they become the whole thing, we're majoring in minor and neglecting the more important things like godliness, spiritual growth. Jesus in Matthew 23, verse 23, talking to the scribes and Pharisees, he says, "You tithe mint and dill and cumin and have neglected the weightier matters of the law, justice, mercy, and faithfulness." Again, you see, like a study of prophecy is beneficial and it has a place, but it should not encompass all of our spiritual life. These type of fellowships create unbalanced believers who have very strong opinions on certain subject, but they remain immature on the main goals of Christian life. So something to keep in mind, are we majoring in minors, or are we having a right perspective that what the priorities are, not neglecting some of these minor subjects, but recognizing where they fall into place and what are the priorities. Now, the fourth quality of unhealthy spiritual leadership is inclusivity without a spiritual growth. Today we hear a lot about being inclusive, being welcoming. There are many churches today now shifting more and more toward this type of direction. The key word is inclusivity. We want to be inclusive. They become very welcoming, and their motto usually is "come as you are." The biggest goal here is to make people feel comfortable, not only by the environment we create, but also with the messages we preach. The main focus becomes make people feel good rather than becoming good. The pastor resembles a motivational speaker rather than a spiritual leader. And the focus is to help people achieve their potential using self-help book to help them with their lives. Again, it isn't so much that we are trying to become godly, but I want to feel good using self-help book, psychology, and how we can again promote an environment where everybody can come in and feel beneficial and feel like something got added to them. And we usually sprinkle a little bit of talk about Christianity or Christ here. And one of the things that these type of churches really highlight is they emphasize how Jesus associated with prostitutes and tax collector, which is true, but they went away from Jesus being changed as a result of being with him. Jesus never changed to become like them, but they went away changed as a result of being with Jesus. Our churches needs to be a welcoming place, accepting people where they're at. But that's not the end goal in of itself. We want to be able to bring people along into a spiritual maturity, into godliness. And many times, as we proceed, as we become more godly, a lot of our issues in life would fall off of us. Our problem is because we live our life based on our own understanding and what seems right to us. That's why in the long run, we would have a lot of issues in our life. But one way is to become godly, and a lot of things fall into the right place as a result of us becoming different, becoming more Christ-like. So again, I think it is wonderful to be inclusive, but inclusivity and making people feel comfortable is not the end goal. It's the beginning. But we want to then progress toward godliness. And I don't think the answer to people's problem are found in self-help book. There have many good ideas, but when you just focus on people's problems and try to solve them, you ultimately end up with a burned out pastor, and many of those issues would remain. But to proceed to godliness, then a lot of issues would take care of themselves as a result of who we are becoming. We want to come to Jesus the way we are, but we want to be changed as a result of associating with him. So these four qualities to me are unhealthy, and we want to know where the balance is. So if you attend a church that has a leadership that resembles one of these qualities, keep what we are saying in mind, and at least minimum for yourself to remain healthy. Now, if the Lord wills, for the next few weeks, we want to talk about, again, some of the fellowship, some of the pattern of churches that we see under the umbrella of evangelicalism. And after that, if the Lord wills, we want to talk a little bit about fallen angels and the spiritual history of the world. So I'm really excited about that. So if the Lord wills, until next time, may the Lord be with you. May he watch over you. May he make his face to shine upon you. This is David Sami with the Christian Journey.